Good morning. We pick up with Arturo, his family, and his friends when they're preparing for Abuela's big memorial dinner. Chapter 22, page 191. Slicing and dicing. Sunday had finally come, and my mom and I got to La Cocina really early to start prepping for Abuela's big memorial later that night. The other cooks and chefs, including Martin, were scheduled to come in a little later, so my mom and I were at the restaurant alone. Ready? My mom asked. It was weird that the restaurant was totally empty because someone was always in there. My mom hit the code for the alarm, and I flipped the lights on in the kitchen. The gas stoves flared up. My mom brought out the kitchen knives and placed the assorted ingredients on the prep station. We're going to cook all of Abuela's best dishes, she said, sharpening the knife and motioning for me to grab an apron. I gulped. My mom handed me an onion, a pepper, and some plantains, cilantro, carrots, shallots, and something that looked like an onion. That's chayote, Arturo. We're going to saute it, but you need to julienne it first. Do the same thing with the carrots and make sure to wash the onion with cold water before you cube it. Then go to the walk-in and pull out the veal stock. It needs to get to room temperature to make the broth for the oxtail. My head spun. Chef Mom continued. Don't cut the plátanos, but do peel the boniato and put them in the pot over there. It will be boiling, so don't throw them in. The last thing I need for you is to burn yourself. The oxtail's in the walk-in. Bring it to me when you're done. I stared. ¿Qué? She snapped. What is Juliet again? Julienne, Arturo, Julienne. It's sliced long ways and thin, like this. She shredded the little orange stick monsters into pieces with her furious chopping. If my mom wasn't a chef, she could have been a samurai. She grabbed a tray full of little chickens and started hacking them in half with a butcher knife that was so big it looked like it belonged to Conan the Barbarian. We're going to make guinea hens, my mom said, cracking them in half in one stroke. She could have easily taken out an army of chicken if they ever attacked her. I stared at the different colored vegetables in front of me. I had already forgotten what I needed to do. Arturo, are you cutting the vegetables? Yes, I said, because a 5'5" lady with a butcher knife the size of her forearm was very intimidating. My mom moved frantically around the kitchen, prepping and chopping and smelling the cazuelos starting to bubble on the burners. It was impressive. Abuela and I used to cook together, but her pace was much slower, at least with me. From the time I was 6, I stayed with her on Saturday nights while my parents went out, and together we prepped for Sunday family dinner. She would chop vegetables and I would peel potatoes. Together we would make soups and sauces and all kinds of cool stuff. Every Saturday night, her apartment filled with the heavenly smells of saffron, yerba buena, cilantro, and perejil. It was our tradition until she got sick and my mom took over the dinner. She preferred to handle everything herself. I started chopping and peeling and julienning, and then I realized I was crying, and my eyes were burning and they wouldn't stop. I rubbed them and they stung more, and my nose started dripping. Before I could reach for a towel, my mom wiped my face with a warm cloth. Mom, my eyes are burning. I splashed cold water on my face and wiped myself with a towel. I tried to refocus when I saw my mom crouched over the sink next to me. Mom, you okay? I regained my vision and saw that she was letting water from the faucet slowly run through her fingers. Her head was bowed like she wanted to put it under the faucet as well. Mom? She looked up, revealing red and puffy eyes. Did the onions get to you too? I asked. She let out a laugh that sounded more like an exhalation, and her lower lip started to shake. It wasn't an onion. My mom was crying. I handed her the towel, and she dipped it in the running water and ran it over her face. Gracias, mi amor, she said, as she hung the towel over her shoulder. It's been so hard. I'm sorry. You shouldn't have to worry about this. Come on. Let's finish, okay? My mom put both hands on her face and stretched her cheeks. It was the first time I had ever seen her like that. She went over to the lobster stock and poured it through a sieve to sift the chunky bits out and pour only liquid into the pot. Then we placed it in another pot and put it back on the burner. I turned the knob, and the flame sparked before calming. The pot steamed slightly. My mom asked me to grab the fish and clams and mussels out of the walk-in to make seafood paella. I looked up to see the vent twirling. It sent out freezing air, and if I reached my hand up, I could feel my hands turn icy. How awesome would it be if I had the power to turn things into ice? I could have frozen the stupid disease that had slowly messed up Abuela's lungs. I could have frozen my mom's tears. I stepped out of the walk-in carrying a tub of seafood and then slapped the tub onto the metal table. My mom hunched over the lobster stock, and I saw a locket dangle from her neck. The shiny little cross and oval-shaped pendant swayed as if a tiny wind blew them together. My mom smelled the stock, and I listened to the silver cross lightly chime with the pendant. It was Abuela's. Chapter 23, Cooking from Memory. Martine and a few of the cooks arrived as my mom and I finished cooking. We placed little fillets with crispy onions on platters and scooped blue cheese mashed potatoes into serving bowls. The pescado a la sal had hardened perfectly. It looked like the fish was wrapped tightly in a salt cocoon. My mom said fish cooked that way always came out exactly how fish should taste. We made a little tomato-based sauce to go with the fish, and then we took the guinea hens and oxtail and arranged them in a ceramic serving dish. For appetizers, we made plantain chips, crispy yuca fries, and bacalao fritters. There were all kinds of salads tossed with green mango, papaya, strawberries, oranges, everything. We cooked up little masitas de puerco, which were basically little fried balls of pork. We had enough food to feed 20 square blocks. Next, my cousins arrived and started to take the trays of food to the dining room and patio. Cars parked in the now infamous lot, and people who loved Abuela made their way inside. Brian had printed out a huge photo of Abuela and placed it at the entrance of the patio. We kept the front closed, so people would have to come in from the lot. My dad wanted everyone to see Abuela before they entered to eat. "Hey," Carmen said behind me, slouching and smiling. Little drops of sweat covered her nose and made her freckles look bigger. "The food smells delicious," she said. "Thanks," I said. More cars pulled up, and a few people approached with bags and balloons and flowers. Mr. Michaels carried a sack of books and gave them to us. Chuchi came dressed like she was at a gala. Enrique presented my mom with a beautiful portrait of Abuela. Friends and friends of friends showed up by the dozens. The Dominguez family brought about 15 people and 3 bags of heirloom tomatoes to the memorial dinner. It was awesome. Carmen had her hair in pigtails and wore bright green jeans with a yellow and white tank top. I could tell she'd been hanging decorations off the trees because the little twigs and leaves stuck in her hair. "Come, I have something to show you," she said. She took my hand and led me outside. "Okay, close your eyes." Before I did, I looked at Carmen. It was around 8 o'clock, and the sun was finally setting against the purplish sky. Her eyes were bright with flecks of honey color in them, almost like a radioactive beehive. Whew. Like she requested, I closed my eyes. "Open them." She pointed to a floribunda bush. Carmen caressed the small bud and stood back to admire it. "How did you get it over here? The nursery is at least 5 blocks away." "I had a little help from Vanessa and the green teens." Carmen opened her arms in triumph. "You like it?" I looked at Carmen and admired the fully bloomed roses. Then I stared at one rose in particular. It was a white rose, like the one I'd seen at Abuela's funeral. "Arturo, are you okay?" Carmen asked. I didn't answer. I just stared as more guests filed into the restaurant. Abuela's favorite music played from the speakers Brian had set up inside, As everyone ate and danced and laughed, it felt almost like the old days, like Wilfredo Pipo had never stepped foot into our neighborhood. Only Abuela could create this feeling. When the memorial was over, everybody helped clean up. My family, our neighbors, nobody complained. We were all happy to do it. Abuela would have loved to see this. After taking out the last of the garbage, Vanessa came over to say goodbye. I never got to tell you, but I'm very impressed with your commitment, Arturo. Very impressed. Thanks. You should run for student council next year. I could use a tenacious spirit on my team. I stared blankly. I'll think about it. Before she walked out, Vanessa turned around and handed me a flyer. I'm going to hold a sit-in tomorrow morning in front of the restaurant before the vote. Why? Vanessa looked at her phone and scrolled through it. You forget, Primo, she said. I'm a Zamora. Giving up is not in my nature. I sent a message out to 5 of the youth groups I belong to. Wow, that's a lot of people. My intel tells me Wilfredo plans to have a bulldozer on the lot first thing in the morning. We're going to be there to make sure he doesn't try anything. Okay, I said. These groups all live for good old-fashioned advocacy. I was really proud of my cousin and slightly intimidated she wanted me to join her political activist team at school next year. Vanessa finally left, and Mop's parents were the next to say goodbye to me. Mop's dad started by handing me a letter. I'm sorry he couldn't make it, Arturo. We got buried in work and just couldn't get up there. He was really bummed. That's okay, I said, taking the letter. He really misses you, Arturo. Me too, I said. Your food was delicious, by the way. Abuela would have been proud, he said, patting my shoulder. Thanks. Mop's dad put his arm around Mop's mom, and they walked out of the restaurant to their car. I found Carmen as I got to the lot. It was empty, only a few cars still parked. The street lamp on the corner was the only light shining on us. I thought about the first time Carmen and I were there. Uncle Frank joined us outside. Delicious food, Arturo. Thanks, I said. He gently rubbed my hair. An incredible chef, he said, looking at Carmen. Just like Abuela. Verdad, mi amor? Carmen nodded, and I dug my hands into my chef's apron as deep as they could go. My throat and stomach took turns dancing and twirling with the rest of my organs. It was a salsa party of nerves, embarrassment, and maybe kind of excitement. Oh, I forgot to give this back, I said, and handed Carmen her book of poems, which I had tucked into my apron so I would remember to return it. Oh, you found my book, she said, and then thanked me. Yeah, it was inside one of the mailboxes, I lied. Carmen took the book and waved goodbye. After the memorial, I went straight home to read Mop's letter. It was exactly how I wanted to end my night. Hey, Arturo, what's up? Sorry we haven't talked. I'm only allowed to use the camp phone once a week because we're supposed to be communing with nature. Camp is pretty cool. Lots of interesting people. Mostly they're from Georgia, North Carolina, and North Florida, like the Panhandle. Our camp cabins have no AC, and you can't leave the windows open at night because the mosquitoes will murder you. Did you hear about Bren? He mailed me a picture of his girlfriend who he met the first day he got to the Dominican Republic, but it was taken from like 30 yards away, and she wasn't even looking at the camera. The girls here are really into the outdoors. There's this cool girl, Autumn, who wears a bandana and she knits. Can you believe that? A 13-year-old who knits and wears a bandana? She's so mature. Like she could be a manager at a coffee shop or something. Anyway, I'm thinking of wearing sandals more and combing my hair into a bun. You think Autumn would be into that? I don't know. It's weird to think about this stuff. Like 3 months ago, we were happy hanging out on Saturdays and playing ball all day. Now we're thinking about girls all the time. I don't know about you, but it hurts my head. Maybe I'll buy some yarn for Autumn for her knitting. What do you think? Anyway, hope the restaurant kicks Wilfredo's butt in the bid. See you in a few weeks. Your bud, Benjamin Mop Darcy.